name is Declan McKibben. I'm the Director of Commercialisation with the ADAPT Research Centre. So ADAPT is a Science Foundation Ireland funded research centre co-hosted in Trinity College Dublin and in Dublin City University. But we have researchers from 8 universities and institutes of technology across Ireland. We focus on digital media technologies. So the topic for the panel discussion today is AI and its role in personalising your business interactions. If you'd like to join the conversation today, use hashtag DTS21. So as we know, business value and business success, it's linked closely to the delivery of engaging and successful experiences around a service. So increasingly, such services, they're delivered digitally or in a hybrid physical digital way. So at ADAPT, we are the SFI Research Centre for Digital Content Technologies Research, and our professors and our researchers are leading the field in research in digital content generation, transformation and interaction across all types of content. We call this multimodal content, and includes text and speech and language and AR and VR and so on. And digital transformation and the adoption of these technologies, it's been happening for some time, it's not brand new. But what's different now, I think this year, is that we've seen this massive transition into the use of digital technologies. So we're seeing a renewed interest from industry in AI and how AI can transform their business and how they can get started on this journey to grow the capability within their organizations. So to discuss the opportunities for AI in this area of personalizing the user experience and how your business interacts with your customers in this way, we've got an outstanding panel of experts. We've got Dr. Amelia Kelly, who's VP of Speech Technology at Soapbox Labs, Professor Owen Conlon from Trinity College Dublin and the ADAPT Centre, and Dr. Niall Murray from Athlone Institute of Technology and also the ADAPT Centre. So I'll just invite each speaker to introduce yourselves, and then we can get started into the discussion. So I'll hand it over to Owen first of all, if that's okay.
Sure thing. Thanks, Declan. So my name is Owen Conlon. I'm the Professor of Computer Science in Trinity College Dublin. My background is very much in the area of personalisation, and I lead the research on what's called digitally enhanced engagement as part of the ADAPT Research Centre, which is one of 3 major strands of research that we have in the centre.
Cool, great, thanks. And Niall?
Hello, my name is Niall Murray, and I'm a researcher and lecturer in Athlone Institute of Technology, and I work along with Owen in the ADAPT Centre. I'm a funded investigator from AIT. My focus, or my research focus, is with respect to extended reality technologies, and specifically trying to take a human-centric approach towards extended reality experiences.
Cool, great. And Amelia?
Hi, I'm Amelia Kelly. I'm the VP of Speech Technology at Soapbox Labs. We're a company that started about 7 or 8 years ago as a spin-out company of Trinity College. And we've gone on to expand into the areas of ed tech and education, but also gaming. We specialize in child speech technology. So my background is very much in speech technologies in general, speech synthesis, speech recognition, but also natural language processing. And we're just seeing the adoption of speech-related AI products by major companies all over the world now. Everybody kind of in on it, and it makes such a really, really interesting user experience for those who use it. Products all over the world now are getting voice enabled, and we just don't want to see children getting left out. And there's very particular technology that needs to be implemented to make speech recognition and related technologies work for child speech. So that's what we're very much involved in Soapbox Labs.
Great, excellent. Okay, thank you for that. So Owen, earlier I think I mentioned as Director of Commercialisation, I'm responsible for collaborative research with industry, but of course ADAPT is a much broader research vision and research programme, and we were earlier this year awarded 42 million euros from Science Foundation Ireland to fund that research vision. Could you just give us a sketch of what that looks like, that research vision, and then maybe talk a little bit more about your particular area that you're leading?
Yeah, sure thing, Declan. I think people see in the background with our ADAPT Zoom backgrounds, you see engaging content, engaging people as the tagline for the research centre. And that very much the focus that drives a lot of our research, is to understand the role that AI plays in how we interact with rich, complex content, as Amelia kind of indicated there. I mean, whether it's speech or it's video, whether it's augmented reality, we're at this point where we're starting to experience things in so many different and diverse ways. And the research that we perform there is to really try and understand where the human fits within all of that. I mean, it's very strange, but people can be very quickly left behind in these digital innovations. As Declan mentioned, you know, we live in this physical digital kind of hybrid world, well, how do we take experience from the physical world and incorporate it in our digital aspects? And how do we find the kind of the blend points of there? So ADAPT breaks down into a number of different areas. I mentioned that I lead the digital enhanced engagement. We also look very much at the fundamentals of digital content and how you slice and dice and understand and transform it between different modalities. And then of course, the whole area of how you manage this content, you know, and the governance structures and so on that go around it, and the ethical concerns that sit around that. If I was to pitch a long-term vision, maybe a 10-year vision that ADAPT is looking at, it's to really think about what happens when AI starts to act on behalf of each one of us as individuals and do things for us. What kind of controls would we have over that? What would the experience be for the other people engaging with our digital avatars representing us in, you know, maybe Zoom meetings and different types of contexts? And that leads to a whole range of stepping stone bits of research that need to be performed to consider even a vision like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I know that we've also worked with industry, right, in terms of this is not just 10-year kind of visionary stuff of autonomous agents and robots and so on, but more practical applications.
Yep.
And I know that you've worked in the area of technology enhanced learning and in recommender systems and so on. Do you want to just mention one of those projects?
Yeah, I'll actually pick one that's outside of both those. And this was work we did with Huawei, where we were looking at how to summarize entertainment videos, so movies in particular. And one of the amazing things about a modern movie production is that you have so many different signals in there. You have the soundtrack, so just the movie, the music soundtrack, and the different tones and elements within it, and they can help indicate elements of tension or focus of the adventure in the plot. You obviously have the spoken track, so the track there, the written track, so people can interpret and see what's going on. And so there are many different signals within that to help us understand a movie and to start breaking it down. But for us, one of the key elements is to start understanding it conceptually. What are the key elements with regards to knowledge, plot evolution, and so on that you could extract from that, so that you could then produce a summary. So not just a trailer, but actual summary that maybe is 10 minutes of a 2-hour movie. And that's the kind of practical application where we're moving between different media types to understand something and then offer it in a form to a user that makes sense for them, because the summary that might make sense for you might be different to the summary that makes sense for me based on our own interests and needs. And of course, that same technology can be applied to, well, Zoom meetings like this and recordings that would allow people to find the parts of content that maybe resonate best with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, thanks. And Niall, I know that in AIT, you've a big focus on mixed reality and augmented reality, virtual reality, and understanding quality of experience. Can you tell us a bit about that, what that is, and why quality of experience in particular is important?
Sure, Declan. So there's a kind of a couple of questions there. The first one's around, you mentioned a couple of terms that are becoming really, really popular now: mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, and essentially all these different types of realities belong on a spectrum of how much content or what kind of digital content is presented to users. So we're on this call here. We're all remote, interacting through this platform, and we're all consuming and producing audiovisual content, but we're all in our own environments within the real world where the content we're consuming and producing, we also have an awareness of what's around us, right? So there's a spectrum of how much of the digital content that's presented to users is reflected by those different terms. So if we start at the far end of the spectrum, where we have virtual reality or even multisensory experiences, this is where we have all of the content that's presented to us is digital. So we might have a VR, HMD. We have no awareness of visually what's around us. All of the content we're consuming is digital content. And if we step back through that spectrum, if we're walking around with our smartphone or maybe a pair of AR glasses, we're still operating in the real world, but we're still operating in the real world. We consume content from the real world, but that content is overlaid with some digital content. And then we come back to kind of an experience like we are here now, where we're consuming the digital content through a 2D screen. And we're also aware of the real world experiences. So there's a spectrum of how much content is presented to user. And a lot of these different names, mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, it causes a lot of confusion for people, even though it's just, we can simply classify it as how much digital content is presented to the user at a given time. Mm-hmm. Then around this kind of concept of quality of experience. So Amelia earlier on, she talked about the user experience of, voice-enabled systems and things like this. Quality of experience is around how we can measure that from a user perceptual perspective. So it's a framework that allows us to classify the different factors that will influence user perceptual quality. So the type of mic I have, the type of camera that's capturing me, they all have an influence on the kind of content that's presented to you. Even the network that this data has been transmitted over, this will have an impact on the perceived quality of experience. And even the context, you know, so some of the people who are on the call today will have come from different backgrounds, they'll have different expertise or knowledge, they'll have different reasons for joining this call. That's a factor that influences perceptual user quality of experience. And it's important to measure and understand this, because we can tailor systems to be specific and personalized if we capture data on the user in a kind of coherent manner. So if I'm a young child, we're going to present a certain type of information for engagement or learning. If I'm an experienced computer scientist like Owen, we present it in a different way. So we can really personalize this kind of content based on QE metrics. So I think that kind of clarifies it.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And Amelia, you mentioned earlier Soapbox Labs. It's in the speech tech space. You're around for 7 or 8 years, I think. So you were very much onto that wave of really what is a very natural way of communicating between people, right? Speech. Before we learn to write, we learn to talk, you know. And so now, of course, we've got Alexa and Siri and Google now and all that kind of stuff. But can you tell us about the Soapbox journey and maybe some of the challenges that you encountered, whether it was in developing the technology or integrating it with your customers and with your products and so on?
Yes, absolutely. So Soapbox Labs started off and continues to be in many respects a deep tech company. Our founder, Trish Scanlon, was very forward thinking when she started the company, but it was born of personal experience as well. Her daughter Alicia was learning how to read, and Trish realized there wasn't anything in the space that would allow feedback to Alicia as she was trying to read. And instead there were just games that she was kind of, you know, learning how to get through by pushing buttons, but not really engaging in the learning experience. And at that point, Trish realized that, like just there, Niall, as you were saying about how you naturally would create content for children that's different from the content you'd make for adults, that never seemed to trickle down to actually building the technology. If you're using a very popular speech recognition system and you're a child, you're going to speak very differently than an adult would speak to that system. And therefore the system doesn't know you're a child, so it's assuming you're an adult and it's putting out guesses of what you're saying based on what adults would say. I've, tested this out obviously a lot with child speech, and a child could be talking about their giraffe and the speech recognition system could be coming back with, what's the IPO? And it's like, no, a child's never going to say that. That's not really tuned to children's speech. So this was very obvious from the get-go. But as we started developing the technology, the applications of this came in. So while we're building AI technology in-house and we're building it all from scratch, we're building it using our own data, our own neural networks and our own infrastructure. We're also trying to convince people to adopt AI in this package into their everyday lives. So we sell business to business. Generally, we talk, for example, in the edtech space to very large publishers. And these publishers in their turn are trying to sell to school districts and teachers. So it's really about this full story. If we talk directly to teachers, we find out so much about what they actually need in order to get child speech recognition to help them. They don't really care about the neural nets or all the things that, we're interested in in-house when we're building it. But what they do care about is that if a child is reading a passage and the speech recognition system thinks that they're saying something completely different because it's not tuned to, for example, the types of mistakes that children tend to make at different areas, at different stages of development, and different types of reading errors that they are prone to, whether they are actually making a reading error or they're just correcting themselves is a huge one. And we only come up with these when we actually engage with the end users of our technology, or the people who are going, not the children themselves, well, the children themselves as well, but the teachers who are trying to use this technology to make their lives easier and help the children that they're trying to teach. And that's what it all comes down to in the end. We're trying to use AI to make the teacher's day much more productive, because they can for example, they don't have to spend 2/3 of their day sitting down with the children in a one-on-one reading session. Instead, they can encourage the children to practice and then intervene where it's necessary and where it's actually needed. And that frees up a lot of their time to do the teaching work that they've been hired to do. So these are some of the things that we had in mind when we built this. But you know, the minute that people start adopting voice and speech technologies, you just see this explosion of ideas and interest in it. So like now we're actually expanding into the gaming space. And there's huge opportunity there as well in toys and just in play, which is really, really important for children as well as they grow up. And basically in Soapbox Labs, we don't want people having to default to adult speech recognition systems in order to give children these experiences in education and play. We feel that we should be able to build speech recognition technology that suits children for this unique stage in their life, not just give them adult products that they're going to grow into and say it's fine until that happens. No, we want to make it really good during these really important stages of a child's development.
Yeah, that's a really terrific applied example of all the stuff that my colleagues are researching. I know that when I've spoken to Owen before, it's about adaptivity and meaningful models of the user, and from Niall, a semantic understanding of context. Obviously, there's a lot of data needed here. So, Owen, you know, for these hybrid physical digital systems, does it need to be always switched on? Do you always need to be listening, or you know, are we always being observed? Is there always data needed to drive these?
I think we're at a point where we're trying to figure out the balance between how much data needs to be acquired in a variety of different situations, how we retain that data, and for me then really importantly, how do we model meaningfully from that data, create user models that are representative of the experience the user's having, and that can then be leveraged to tailor future experiences towards that user. And two main kind of drivers within ADAPT are the area of this idea of drivable AI. So giving control to different actors, and so not always just the consumer, but often people in the pipeline, that they can tune and adjust how complex neural systems are possibly working with appropriate visible controls and levers. And that often requires some uplift into a semantic space where you're utilizing some knowledge constructs, the relationships between those to make sense of the raw signal. And that sense making then can be brought forward to the end user, and that's really useful. Another component of this is what we call attentive AI, and it's trying to understand how much data is required in a variety of different situations to deliver appropriately to that user, and how much data can we just not gather. So I think there are two components there. And as we move towards this and get it right, we'll have increasingly controllable systems that the user can bring then that other experience that they have, the experience that's not been quantified in a digital way, and they can express it, via different control mechanisms, different visualizations of these models to bring their experience into those systems. And again, hopefully shorten the distance between that system trying to deliver something that's the one size fits all versus the size that actually works for that person.
Okay, so control is important there, drivable AI and so on. And Amelia, I guess when you're developing this technology for children, it has to be inclusive, right? Because you're including them in it. And so, Niall, we've got extended reality, intelligent reality, immersive media. What does it look like in kind of, what does the future look like as all of these kind of technologies and capabilities are colliding? And are there any examples, because I know that you have an active collaboration program with lots of different companies. Can you also sort of, as well as sort of saying what's going to be happening in 5 years, what are people doing today with this technology?
So that's an interesting question, Declan. And I could be here for a while, right? But so there's different, we talked about the different terms to reflect this kind of technology, and there's also the different delivery platforms. So now today, like mobile AR is ubiquitous, really popular. Amelia talked about using game technology on tablets for kids. That's here. When people talk about extended reality, they generally kind of think about, very extravagant headsets and things like this. But on, smartphones and tablets, this technology is here, right? Even if you think about the automotive sector, it's been here for a number of years. So if I'm trying to reverse my car and I have a view of from the rear through the rear camera, and I see an overlay of the trajectory, the system wants me to take. Like, that's AR, right? So like, this technology is here and now, and it's ready to be taken advantage of. In terms of what it will look like in the future, if we see like the next generations of the wearable HMDs, whether that's AR or VR, I think they will become much smaller, and they will be multi-sensory, in that, like, haptic in the gaming field in particular, it has really gained traction in over a significant period. And the experiences that we have with AR, VR will be quite naturalistic. So we can move our bodies around these environments. We can manipulate with the objects in the environments. And you mentioned like semantic content earlier on. What we do in those environments will mean something that we can extract information on the user within their behavior within the environment. And that can be really important for like the use cases that Amelia touched on earlier on, or in education with adults, health and safety training, across a range of application domains. Like, this has actually been one of the challenges for this extended reality technologies, is that it isn't specific to one particular application domain. If it was, you could focus its development towards this specifically. For certain, gaming has been an area where there has been huge investment, but in my personal opinion, it'll be applications within the health space, applications within the education space, where it'll have huge societal impact, where we can kind of develop systems that are multimodal, multisensory, and incredibly personalized, so that we can all progress and learn and use these systems. So this is what I kind of see in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, actually, one of the Adapt spin-out companies is in that sort of health tech space. It's a wearable device to help with balance issues from a physiotherapy perspective. So again, a speech interface, sensing somebody's movement, and then stepping them through a therapy towards a diagnostic or towards some sort of recovery. So yeah.
Which is very personalized. So those systems will adapt to the given context, to the given behavior or performance of the user, and they can be really personalized. This is where the power of this technology will be, I believe.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So Amelia, you mentioned earlier ed tech. It's a big area for you in terms of adopting this technology, and then some of the barriers you need to overcome, convincing the ed tech companies and them convincing teachers to take on the technology. So where is it going in 5 years, either in ed tech or in gaming or in other industries that you're targeting?
Well, I think it's just getting bigger and better, to be honest. More and more people, especially now, I suppose, sadly enough, with COVID, has a lot of people have turned to Zoom for education, and they've realized that it works in a pinch, but also that there are takeaways that can be taken from actually interacting with your class remotely, or doing work on the computer that then can be viewed by the teacher. And that's kind of the way that a lot of these ed tech companies are going. We do have one client, Amplify, who are a massive educational company in the US. And we originally were going to work with them on our fluency product that allows teachers see how fluently and measure how fluently children are reading particular passages. We were actually aiming for this September to release it, but last year they said, right, we need it this September instead. They needed it in September 2020, and we pulled out all the stops in order to deliver it for them. But it's just an indication of how the educational companies are looking around and going, right, we need this now. Everybody's ready for it. We didn't realize how ready everybody was for this, but they are. So what we see in the next 5 years is just maintaining excellent relationships with some of these educational companies that we're involved with, and getting more on board. It's really not about competing between the companies for us. It's about everybody on board, so that the children who are actually availing of this technology have wider access to it, and that it works really well for them. Owen, you mentioned that in technology, when you're building at large cohorts of people, just get left behind, because if you're building technology for a particular sector and the people involved in building that technology are all from a particular sector, then you can unintentionally sometimes just build huge systems that only cater to that segment of society. And we really don't want to see that happen, especially for children. And at Soapbox, we see it as like a special responsibility, because we're dealing with children's speech and we're dealing with education. It's very, very important that we build systems that work equally for all children who will be using this technology, regardless of their socioeconomic background, regardless of of their gender or their race or anything like that. So actually we do have some, we work with some universities who do independent studies like MIT, Florida, Center for Reading Research as well. And they've done some independent studies that show that our technology, unlike other speech technologies, actually works equally well for children of many, many different cohorts. So and socioeconomic backgrounds and different demographics. So we're really, really excited about that. And we see, basically in the next 5 years, we just want to see equitable technology rolled out that children can use and avail from all across the world. And it's just a very important part of the puzzle for us.
Well, it's a great way to finish up this discussion. It's flown past, unfortunately. I had a whole bunch of other topics I wanted to go into, but that's a really nice one to finish on, you know, ethical and trustworthy AI and ethical use and deployment of the technology as well. And, you know, control from a kind of safety security perspective, but also inclusion, such an important area. So I want to thank everybody for your time today. Brief that it was, Amelia, Niall and Owen. And thanks very much. And once again, if anybody wants to join in the conversation today, it's #DTS21.